Thanks for listening to the Intersections in Learning and Development cast, a series from the training, learning, and development community. My name is Monique St. Paul, and this cast focuses on forging relationships that foster effective learning no matter where you start. Whether you design, develop, deliver, support, or consult, and/or all of the above, we hope to provide you with new ideas, inspiration, and connections across the L&D community. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a terrific Tuesday. My name is Monique St. Paul. Welcome to Intersections in Learning and Development. My co-host is here, Lisa Crockett, and she's going to disappear in a few moments. But our guest today is Andrea, and I'm going to pronounce this hopefully correctly, McEneaney. Yes, thumbs up. There we go. And she is a co-founder of ID Lance, and we'll be discussing the learning intersections she experiences as an ID, learning technologist, recruiter, and community builder. We really wanted to talk to Andrea today because the intersection of ID lands with freelancing highlights an important consideration for all freelancers, which is how can you work independently yet have a community to fall back on for support as a sounding board for creative and technical challenges. So, Andrea, I'll actually let you give a little bit more about yourself, bio that you want to share with us, good and bad, and go from there.
Yeah, so you said my name right. I'm Andrea McEneaney. I'm a co-head honcho. We like to, AKA co-founder at ID Lance, and as she said, we have a community of freelancers that we support through. We support each other through like mentorship and whatnot, but also just like daily life support, honestly, with like work and projects and managing your time and how much do you save for taxes, that kind of stuff. But what's cool is through starting that community, we've kind of organically grown into an agency where we are actually using our freelancers to staff gigs for companies. And we've got some like pretty exciting partnerships with like Zoom and Fleming Steakhouse and some cool stuff like that we're really excited to be able to bring our freelancers into gigs like that. Personally, I, as most people, was like an accidental instructional designer in that I didn't know that it was a thing until like I realized that someone told me it was a thing. And I had been doing it in all my jobs, but I didn't really realize it. And then once I realized it was a thing, I sort of self-taught for a while. I scrapped my way into being an instructional technologist at the Orlando County Library or Orange County Library System in Orlando, doing like technology classes and stuff. They actually gave me a test on Addy to take the job. It's like a handwritten test on Addy. And then I had to use Adobe Captivate, and I had never touched it in my life. And the guy was like standing behind me watching me do it.
How'd you do?
I did fine. I faked my way somehow. He also gave me some hints because he could tell that we could be friends. So he was like, just click that there. But ever since then, I've been working in instructional design and technology I was at Western Governors University, Strategic Education Inc. Like my day job stuff has been in higher ed, but all my freelance work has mostly been corporate. So I've kind of got all that going. But I've been freelancing, I think, since, I don't know, a while now. And my co-founder actually is the first person who gave me my first freelance instructional design job.
And
So
now
it's,
look to you.
and now look at us now.
I'll ask a question that maybe is easy for you to answer, but what do you like about technology?
I just thought of this answer now. I probably have answered this differently before, but I kind of like having to work within the limitations of a technology. It's like, okay, here's a tool. It can do what it can do. Do something with it, and it might not exactly solve what you were trying, or it might not do exactly what you wanted to do, but make it work like with it. So I kind of like that about it. But also, I mean, technology in general is amazing. You can like just be swimming and watch your iPad and watch terrible TV at the same time. Like, it's kind of cool. Not instructional design related, but hey, I could be streaming your podcast while I'm swimming.
That is true. And then I would ask for people who want to be instructional designers, as you did it yourself, what would you encourage them to learn, if not Addy or Captivate?
Yeah, side note, if I had not just randomly self-taught myself Addy randomly, I would have failed, but somehow they just thought that would be important. Like, and even though I'd never used it in the job. But it's okay. I would say if you're a freelance instructional designer, asking the right questions to get at like the training issue. That is like learning how to start from zero knowledge and information about a problem or about a company and be able to whittle yourself down to like, oh, that's what's going on here. Because you can systematically ask questions and sort of branch off based on the client's answers to like get to what you actually need to do. Yeah. And then, yes, I see. Yes, I'm looking at the chat. Sorry, at the same time. I'm being talked to on the chat. And then also just like brushing up on like the basics of learning science, right? Like I'm no pro, I'm no theory pro, but I think when you get exposed to it, even if you don't think you're using it, you're subconsciously using it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Sometimes I listen to myself speak and go, "Oh, I do know what I'm talking about."
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Question for you. Can you describe your development process and how it varies project to project?
Oh yeah, it is so different every project. And honestly, that was what intimidated me about being a freelance instructional designer in the beginning is I kept asking people like, what is the actual project that you're doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, oh, you're helping this company with their program, but like, are you making a document? Are you making something in an online course? Are you making a video? Like, what does it actually mean? And to be honest, most of my development process for like lots of clients has been they give you a big pile of stuff and then you got to go through the stuff and sort it and realize like, yeah, they don't expect me to know what all of this stuff is, but you kind of just have to use your critical thinking skills to like fill in the gaps and like make assumptions enough to be able to organize it, at least to give them something to react to. Like what I end up doing a lot is like I have talked myself into just going for it. Just do something and give the client something to react to instead of it's not that I don't ask questions, but I ask questions enough to kind of know what's going on and then just produce something, whether that's a storyboard, depends on the project, right? Are you making a storyboard? Are you making an online course? Whatever. Instead of asking so many questions to the point where like the client is like, just do something already. Like you're nitpicking what you're asking me. Like I never want to get to that point with a client. So that's kind of been my philosophy is like, just go for it. Even if I know nothing about what I'm doing, I just try and organize stuff, get feedback constantly and stay in contact. So like I try to always make sure that my client knows where things are at any given time and be really open with communication. Yeah. Just like I'm big on text. Like if clients are open to texting when I'm like working on something, you can ask them a quick question. That has honestly saved my life a bunch of times because you can just develop that relationship and just be able to talk about stuff very efficiently. In terms of like actual like technical development, right, where you're taking like a storyboard or you're making a storyboard and it's going to be a course, I have to chunk it. I have to chunk the tasks out. Like I can't just look at it as a whole. I have to like make it a game for myself and be like, okay, I'm only going to do this little part first. And then I take a break and I'm only going to do this little part, which sounds like common sense. But when you're starting out, sometimes you're like, I don't know what all of this is going to be in the end. And nobody does. Yeah. Nobody knows. You have to just start. And then that feeling of the beginning of a new project, whether you're working full-time or freelance, and it's this kind of beautiful feeling where you start out and you're like, how will I ever do this? Yeah. How will I ever take all this information, do anything with it? And then by the end of the project, you're like, whoa, somehow I did it. And it's all because you got to just chunk it out and not get overwhelmed.
So here's the question that I have, though I understand chunking, is it linear when you chunk? Or is it sort of you put pieces together as they come to you, and then when you see them as a whole, put them in the order that they're supposed to be in?
I think the second one. I kind of approach it as you articulated it better. I just say number 2. I almost approach it like when I was in college and grad school, I would write papers and I would just do whatever research was interesting at the time to me. Like I have to find all these articles, right? And that were relevant to whatever I'm writing. And then I would just write notes, whatever seemed like it was important, and then color code it by category with a highlighter. I had to handwrite everything back then.
So I still do.
Honestly. Yeah, I still do. even with my iPad, I'm like handwriting stuff, and then like I can't not handwrite to absorb it. And then I organize it later and then put it into like sections. Like, oh, okay, like here's this big pile of documents on mutual funds, right? And teaching people about mutual funds. Okay. Like what seems to go together? And then after I've like written all my notes or like done that, and then I like separate it out, and then I decide what things should go before what things and all that.
Excellent. And as you're thinking about showing this to your client and having them communicate and sort of feedback and understand it, do they understand what they're looking at, or they're like, this is chicken scratch notes, or do you have a certain way that they see it before you actually develop it?
It depends on the client, because I've had clients that like have their own format where you just got to put everything into their format, and whatever I'm going to produce has to be in their format. But if I'm just doing it all from my, like, if I were doing everything, right, and it's my documentation and my vision or whatever for helping them, I like to start with curriculum maps, right? Like where you get buy-in first on like a target, on the target outcomes, right? And then get them to approve it, give feedback. And then you will whittle it down to like whether, for instance, a project I'm working on right now, you've got the target outcomes, and then you've got the like the essential question for each of those things. So it's like a more down-to-earth way of like what this person is going to learn if they take it. And then from there, it's like, well, what information do you need to build up to those things? And that's kind of, I work better in spreadsheet form for curriculum maps.
Yes.
Because some people I know just like to write word outlines, right? Here's this, and then this, and this. Here's this, and my brain cannot. It's you have to scroll through too much.
Yeah.
I'm very much into like I know it sounds like old school, but like, like Excel type spreadsheet things.
I know. I
support that. Yeah, and I've done stuff like Miro and like those kinds of like maps and things like that. But if the client, some of my clients, like they would just look at that and be like, that's too much for me. So I try to keep it like down to earth, right?
Do you welcome them into that process? Do you give them access to your spreadsheet, or do you sort of storyboard it first for them to look at?
At a certain level, and again, depends on the client, but like if we are designing something from scratch, yeah, they'll have access to it for sure. And then it can be collaborative. Sometimes it's collaborative. Sometimes it's like, hey, here's this, give me comments or notes on it. But I always have like a backup version, obviously, just in case there are things that get edited and deleted and all that. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I gotcha. Always email yourself the original version is what I say.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Email, secret folder on Google Drive.
Okay, so let's say, how do you conduct design sessions? So like, what are your favorite activities? When they give you this stuff, is there ever sort of a conversation of how you're going to break it down, or do you do that on your own?
I tend to like to do it on my own, to be honest. Like I like time with all the stuff to figure out what's what and even get oriented. What I really I don't like just being given stuff and then like, all right, get on a SME call and like talk about it and ask your questions. It's like, I haven't even gotten to like know what I'm even doing yet. So I like to have some time offline to gather myself and gather notes. And then when I go into like a call with a SME or a call with, the stakeholders or whatever, I try to make sure I've reviewed, at least on a high level, everything so that any glaring questions right away will be asked. Because I've been in situations before where I don't know if I got busy or if I was just being an amateur or whatever, where it's like, oh yeah, this seems fine, I'll just start working on it, I don't need to ask anything, or like, I'll ask this question, but I don't need to, this thing looks straightforward. And then I start to actually work on it and develop and all that, and I'm like, oh, if I have like this one huge question that if I had gotten it answered on day 2, my life would be so much easier, because then it also kind of makes you look bad if you're like, wow, you didn't read that until like 3 weeks. Like I gave you all this stuff. You're only asking me this now.
They gave you 6 months worth of information. I don't even have to know that's what happened.
Yeah.
So on to the part of sort of where you're being an amateur. So what is the biggest change you think you've made in how you approached a learning project when you started versus the way that you do it now?
Confidence.
Okay.
probably the number one difference is like when I first started, I feel it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, is this okay? Like, is this what you're supposed to be doing? Are you like, like I'm so nervous to do this call because I don't know what they're going to be talking about. And I don't even know what the project's going to be like. And I've just accepted I'm never going to know what the project is like until I'm given the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They could say what it's going to be. You could read the project brief and then they give it to you and you're like, you just want me to make a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, we want all of this other stuff, and then you get to it, and they're like, what you're telling me is that you want a RISE course, right? Like what you're telling me. Obviously, I do the whole thing where like you make recommendations. You're not just an order taker. Like that's part of also where the confidence comes in, though. Whereas like I've just accepted that it's normal to have no clue when you're meeting with the people for the first time, and I like. It's this confidence, but also it's a quiet confidence because I also have been in calls where I've been made uncomfortable by myself or other people when they go in like overconfident and they're like, yeah, I know exactly what you need. And it turns the client off and you're just like, this is not good either. So it's like this balance, right? Of like not talking yourself out of taking the project or out of knowing that you can do it well because you don't know what's going on yet, and realizing that's just a part of the process and being like, you know what? I'm comfortable in uncertainty now.
Okay. No,
like
that is be comfortable being comfortable being uncomfortable. That's there you go.
Yeah, like this is what it is. And I used to think like I could never work with like a super stuffy corporate client. I mean, look at me, how I'm talking. Like I could never like be there on a daily basis in an office. I mean, I could, and it would be fine. And I worked at like NBC Universal and it survived. But I was always so nervous. Like, what if I get like a client and they're just like very, very cut and dry and whatever? And I've gotten that, and it's been fine.
Yeah. You
People are humans.
Yeah,
you adjust appropriately, and honestly, sometimes they need a little bit of energy. Like you can't not be yourself, but you got to learn how to be yourself in different levels, right? Of like for different situations. And I used to not think that I could do that, but now I'm like, yes, I can do that.
So, question for you, since you have sort of a network of freelancers, do you ever meet a client and think this person isn't going to work for me, but I know an ID that this would work for? Do you think you can do that, or that's not? Yeah.
That happens for sure. And usually, it's like my mindset, and Parker will be proud of me for saying this. He's the co-founder of ID Lance. Has changed in that like it used to be all about like when you're a freelancer, you're like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Like I gotta like make a living, gotta make a living. And now it's like I have to do that, but you also can't stress yourself out to the point where you're taking on just so much that because you're like in the scarcity mindset. And I found that the more I kind of recommend and let things go, and when we're subcontracting, and then like we're all finding our groove, and it's really, really cool to get to know all the people in our community and then be like, oh, we just met with that client. Like, you know who would be really, really good for that? This person. And then you talk to them and they're like, oh my gosh, that sounds exactly like what I would want to do. And you're like, oh my God. And you're all like having a party. And it's like, this is going to be great. Like that's like one of the best things about being in this kind of life, right? Like this kind of community and industry and all of that, because you can do that. And then it's also really fun to see how somebody else is going to take a project in a totally different way than you would. And I'm at a point where like I almost am like like this person's going to do it way better than I ever could, right? My brain just can't get to where you are, client. Like I could do it and it would be fine, but you know what? This other person is probably going to be great, and if they're available, I like to make that connection.
Okay. And then
it's not that I'm turning down work left. Like I still have to make a living too. Like we all have to,
of course, right?
Stuff. But it's like it's this kind of it's like, you ever watched The Big Lebowski?
I've seen it, yes.
With like the dude, and you just like I feel like I'm like accidentally becoming the dude, where it's like, yeah, things are flowing and whatever, and I'm trying to like cultivate that kind of zen instead of being so stressed out, which is ironic because I spent probably 32 of my years of life, I'm 32 now, I'm about to be 32, like just totally stressed out and like uptight.
Yeah.
And things don't go as well for me when I'm that way. So
I can respect that. That. And I think oddly, COVID has slowed people down a little bit and makes you sort of realize what might be important to you. But that's a total aside.
Yeah.
So what is your routine to get you into the zone?
I have to take a walk. Like I have to before I'm going to actually do something. I have to walk, but also partly because I have a dog that if I am going to focus for any amount of time, she has to be walked, or she will put her nose behind my back and be like, "Come on, let's go." And I used to never drink coffee, but now I've become a basic iced coffee drinker, and so I usually get that. And I do have to have something on TV or something that I can
Really?
ignore. I have to. I can't be alone in silence. Sometimes I'll just start a task and it's silence, 3 hours go by, great. But if I am trying to cultivate it from scratch, I
Yeah.
have to have something that's interesting but ignorable on TV.
I'm the complete opposite of you. I need to sit in silence.
Oh,
Um,
I can't. I used to write all my papers in college in Washington Square Park by hand, and then I would go home and type them. I just have to be around stuff and noise and yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. How do you keep up to date with your own sort of professional experience and trying to understand what's going on, or growth is the word I was looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I've been in such like a survival mode for so long for many reasons in life and whatever that now I'm realizing that I can cultivate habits to sort of grow professionally on a regular basis. It's
Hmm.
only in like the past couple of years where I've like taken that seriously. It's always been like, I gotta learn what I need to learn to do the task I have to do, right?
Hmm.
And now I feel like I'm at a point where like I can go and seek out new information regularly, like to stay updated. So I try to like participate in things like this and watch stuff like this. And to be honest, I wish I was, but I am not an industry book reader. So that's what I don't
That's
do.
that's okay.
It's like when I want to read a book, it needs to be about like magic or witches or something. Like I don't want to, but I do, I'll like peruse blogs, but mostly it's through other people. Honestly, it's just staying
Mhm.
engaged with other people and seeing what they're excited about. And then I become excited about it. But that's kind of my main method is
That
through relationships.
that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
The next question that I would ask you that is totally just blanking for whatever reason, so welcome to that.
That's
Um,
okay.
is do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you live by?
Yes, I do. And I think I've been waiting ever since I read this one book to be able to mention this.
Here you go. I gave you
I've
the
been
spot.
waiting. Okay.
It's,
Okay. Less impressed, more involved. Do you know who said that?
I do not.
Matthew McConaughey.
I
His his book is called Green Lights, and I know that he's great. I'm sorry. I was like, this is probably gonna prove he's a terrible person. It didn't. It made me feel the opposite. And he said he wasn't even just he was literally just himself. Anyway, um, yeah, less impressed, more involved, and it works in two ways. And when I heard it, I was like, holy crap! Like this is how I live my life without realizing it, or this is how I want to live my life.
Mhm.
So less impressed, that part. Like if you're doing really well and you're successful and you're like, woohoo, look at me, like he was a successful actor, like that walked on to a role basically. Like he tried and he like had to like get the role by putting effort in. But you don't just sit back and go like, wow, I'm so cool, like this is really great, I get to like kick back now, right? Like I'm so impressed with myself. Because the minute you start being like overly impressed with yourself, like things drop and plummet and it's just like, or things get boring. But if you stay involved with like your present moment and your present situation and be thinking about the future, like you can appreciate yourself, but you got to be more even like involved and present in your own enjoyment of your life, right? And then the other way it works is like when you see someone else who's like you think is like killing it, like you see all those like people on LinkedIn or whatever, instead of being like, wow, I'm like so impressed, they're so great, I'll never be like that. It's like, no, stop being impressed and just start getting involved in your own life and what you're doing and more active in what you're doing as an individual, right? So
I like that.
it's,
I
it's just
like
so
it.
beautiful. So beautiful.
I like it. So, question for you as a co-founder, do you feel you have any responsibility to the people within your community to support them or mentor them? Like, what kind of feeling is it to be a leader that people sort of look up to you, sort of as guidance as they're starting their freelance career? Sorry.
it makes it makes me feel funny because I often feel like I don't know what I'm doing at all. But I do feel a responsibility just to be there for people because I think I've got more of like the I like Parker's like the pro at everything. Like he's been doing stuff for like 20 something years, right, Parker? Like you're just like you just know everything and like are just like the expert. I feel like I'm like the sidekick moral support of like, yeah, like let's put funny memes up. No. But I think sometimes you just need to hear from someone who's been through what you've been through, work wise and like even soft skills wise, right? Like communicating with clients and dealing with difficult situations. And I think in the same way that people can be like, oh, I give really good advice, but I don't, like I'm not perfect in my own life. That's kind of the situation. It's like I can read a situation and be really objective and like support people through stuff. But it doesn't mean that I think that like I'm like even better at it than anybody else. But you just need to be that person who's there for people. And what I love is like this daily communication we all have together, and we're like getting to know each other's careers and lives and interests and stuff. And when we're all sort of individually working, I feel like that can be kind of, for me, it's been life-changing in a way where it's like, wow, I actually have people I'm talking to every day. And it gave me like the strength to be able to quit my job a couple of times actually, because I kind of had a non-linear path. And like, it's really cool when people are coming back to us and being like, hey, guess what? The thing that you said that I should do, it worked. Or like, hey, that didn't work, but I learned this other new thing. And then from when they share that, the other people are learning it too. So it's, yeah, I see it more as like, keeping the party going versus like being some all-knowing person.
Being, yes. Less
You know?
impressed, more involved. Before you like before we move on to questions about you, is there any final thing that you would want to impress upon them in terms of the professional realm to need to know about ID work or freelancing?
Yeah, I would say it's very helpful to just be constantly being self-aware about how you're acting, how you are in certain situations with clients and working. Like kind of like checking yourself regularly. And it doesn't mean you got to be like overly self-conscious, but just like, oh, working in your communication and figuring out how to word things clearly and not overwhelming the client, but also giving them everything you need. So like just being aware that every little, not to make it sound intense, but like every little interaction that you have is building a relationship. And there are things, and figuring out your style of how you're comfortable with doing that and honing it. Because some people are not cool with texting. Some people want to call people on the phone. Some people want to email. It's figuring out how to adapt to different clients and what they want, but also, knowing yourself and how you're going to do best in certain projects and accepting it. Also, I wish someone told me this a long time ago, like with any ID work, especially if it's like you're really diving into something that's like esoteric and like the material, you're just like, oh my gosh, how will I ever know this? Is walk away from it. Like walk away from it. Don't force yourself to sit at your computer and struggle, because if you can just walk away and then come back, you're probably going to do whatever it was like 5 times faster.
True.
I would never give myself permission to just kind of give up for a second and go. I'd just be like, I have to do this now. And then I'd be like 6 hours later and I'd have like one paragraph.
And you could still do it. Yeah. You could still do it away from your computer. Just because you've walked away from it doesn't mean you're not thinking about it.
Exactly. You're still thinking about it. Yeah, totally.
Okay. Yeah. On to you.
Professional figure outers. That's literally it. It's just like IDs are just like very organized problem solvers. Like very organized problem solvers. Yeah.
So on to you. How many poppets do you have?
At least one.
At least one.
I have an ice cream cone one that my daughter took. But yeah, I got one. This is my main one. It's an otter holding a thing. I'm a fidgeter, and I didn't realize that I was, but I am a fidgeter.
Oh no, it's fine. So to I have a binder clip. Often a binder clip. Nice. I try not to use a pen because those click louder. This is a little quieter. But I totally understand. Next.
I'm realizing this makes noise more than I think it does. Like sometimes
I think if
it far away, but
I think if I didn't know you had it, I wouldn't have heard it. If that makes sense. All right. Yeah. But last song you listened to?
Oh. This is ironic considering that we're like Parker and I run like a freelance business community, but there's a Dr. John song called "Everybody Want to Get Rich Right Away," and it's not about. It's obviously like about how that's not the most important thing, but it's kind of funny that that's the title.
Okay, excellent. Last thing you read? We know it's not an industry book.
It is not an industry book. Well, is currently reading count?
Currently reading does count. And Kim, I see your message.
Where is it? It's I'm about to read this.
Okay, yes.
And then the house on the Cerulean Sea. I can't say that word. That's what I'm reading now. It's like Harry Potter-ish, but I've only read about 10 pages, but it seems pretty good.
Okay. That fits with the witches that you mentioned before. And then one of our audience members wants to know, are you a Sander fan, which is a fantasy author?
I don't know what that is. See, I say witches, but then I'm like, have I actually read it? If I'm reading about witches, you know what I end up reading? Like Susanna Lipscomb is like a historian that has stuff about witches. I read that stuff. Yeah.
Can we have more information about that full person's name? I'll wait for her to type. But okay, your favorite form of entertainment?
Live music or trashy reality TV?
Ooh, excellent. The full name was Brandon Sanderson.
I do not, but I'm going to add it to my list.
Okay, excellent. Look, new things. Who do you fangirl?
Oh, God.
Beside Matthew McConaughey.
Vincent D'Onofrio. If you guys go look who he is, you're going to make fun of me for the rest of my life. He was the bug in Men in Black.
Oh, okay.
But he's since gone on to such critically acclaimed things as Law and Order: Criminal Intent. And no, he's actually like a really good, like classically trained actor. But I don't know. I've been standing Vincent D'Onofrio since I was like 9 years old.
So you are your own IMDb. What is your guilty pleasure that is PG related?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got to think about that one then. Taco Bell. I don't even feel guilty about it. Probably that drink that was on TikTok at Starbucks, the venti iced white mocha latte with extra caramel drizzle and vanilla sweet cream foam.
Very specific. Could your partner or best friend accurately describe what you do for a living?
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. I think that's good. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent. I'm out of questions for now, but I want to give you the opportunity to sort of share any last thoughts about doing this.
Last thoughts. I don't know. I watch Vincent D'Onofrio movies. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I mean, in terms of like, to be real, in terms of like being an ID and a freelancer and all of that, it's like what I always like to just tell people is like, don't be intimidated. It's gonna seem like you should be intimidated because there's all these people that are like doing stuff like this and being like, oh, look at me talking about curriculum maps and blah 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 blah. But like, you're probably doing or know about the things, but you just don't know the names of them yet, right? A lot of it's like jargon and stuff, but like, it's being a good ID. I feel like is really about like having really good common sense and being organized and being able to think logically through things, and that can kind of get you through most projects. It's like, of course, you need to learn how to put your shoes on before you get on your bike. I mean, you could ride your bike without shoes, but that's dangerous. So.
Debatable. It hurts.
It hurts.
I appreciate the calm confidence and just the willingness to sort of share your experience. So, Lisa, I don't know if you have anything additional to say, but if you don't come on in just a moment, I will say thank you for your time, Andrea. I do appreciate it. If you aren't connected with her, please connect with her. Check out ID Lance to see what she and Parker are up to. Other than that, me and Lisa will let you know when our next episode is. But thanks for coming so much and have a fantastic day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. You were awesome, Andrea. I've been hysterical on mute over here the whole time.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Have a good one.
Have a good one, everyone.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks again for listening. And if you find value in our content, please consider supporting TLDC with a membership. Go to thetldc.com/join to sign up and get access to hundreds of our recorded videos, free entry to all of our live virtual conferences and events, and more. Your support helps us continue to build community and share valuable resources for L&D professionals around the world. Thanks again for listening.